our past president, Scott Metzger, who will be our host for today. Scott, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, President Pat. Are we bringing the candidates up now? Let's all come on up. And I want to say good afternoon to everybody and say how pleased I am to see such a huge turnout for this very important meeting. When Jean Marie asked me to moderate this, I was kind of on the fence, but then she told me there was a free lunch involved, so I was so here I am. We're fortunate to have all three of the candidates who are running for mayor, each of whom currently sits on the Coronado City Council. Seated at the table, my left to right, we have Councilman Casey Tanaka, Councilman Mike Donovan, and Councilman John Duncan. And there are rules of engagement for this debate, which I'd like to go over. They were debated heavily, and they came together on CNN and figured out how they were going to do it. Here's the rules of engagement. There are 4 questions that will be asked of each candidate, and at the end of the question period, each will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. The first question was shared with each of our candidates in advance, but the other questions are new to each candidate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each of the questions and 2 minutes for a closing statement. The first question will be asked alphabetically by last name. Because they're also seated alphabetically, I'll then move down the line so that every candidate has the opportunity to answer first, in the middle, and last. This is out of fairness to all the candidates. And there is a rule of civility, but knowing these gentlemen, I'm sure we don't need to review that. So we have timekeepers ready?
Yes.
Timekeepers are ready? Okay. Then we'll get started with the first question, and this will be first John Duncan. And this is the question that's already been shared with everybody. Briefly introduce yourself and explain why you believe you are the best candidate to serve as our next mayor.
I'll stand up just for this one so you can see me. First of all, I'm not familiar with this new alphabet that was instituted. But I am willing to go with the flow, and it's one of the main qualities I bring potentially as mayor.
I'll take that. I'm an English teacher. It's my problem.
2 minutes. Okay. So usually when I do my openings, I talk about my experience and about my passion on the main issues I'm working on, such as the Tijuana sewage issue and the bridge suicide barrier, infrastructure, and things like that. And I introduce my family, but there's so many Rotarians here, and by the way, good afternoon, President Pat, Rotarians and guests. But today I wanted to do something slightly different with my opening. I've never really talked about this too much before, but I wanted to touch base on what the impact of Rotary has had on me as a leader and what I think that will bring to my future as mayor of Coronado. Rotary has something that isn't really talked about, which is there's this unspoken, quiet watching of new Rotarians. So I'm sorry to scare the Red Badgers, but it's true, you're watched. And no one really says anything to you that you must do this or you must do that. They just watch you as you go through your time in Rotary. And then slowly over time, these people that you have tremendous respect for come to you and quietly say something like, thank you. And you say, for what? You've met our expectations on what we want, what Rotary stands for giving, for showing up, for doing what you say you're going to do. And that respect from fellow Rotarians is something that really touches me, and I try to incorporate that into the next 10 seconds. Let me just say that that desire to live up to your respect and meet your expectations is what hopefully I've done as a Rotarian, as a council member, and you can expect from me as mayor of Coronado. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Councilman Mike Donovan.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, first, thanks to President Pat and Jean Marie Bond and Mr. Metzger for holding this, giving us all a chance to chat with everybody. I wanted to spend the time and just give you a little bit of my background. I came to Coronado in the mid-70s in the Navy. It's kind of a common theme. But I graduated from the Naval Academy in '74. I went through a program the Navy had to go get an immediate master's. So I went to MIT, got a master's in engineering. And then I went another year of training, got a lot of training from the Navy, in the Navy's nuclear propulsion program. So I got here in '77. My first ship was one of the original nuclear-powered cruisers, USS Bainbridge. So we got to Coronado and just fell in love with it immediately. I spent 10 years on active duty, have been a resident of Coronado since 1977. Spent 20 years in the reserves after that, retired as a captain with 30 years of total service. So when I went into the reserves, I went to work at Solar Turbines across the bay. You go by it every time you go to the airport. Was there for over 30 years. Had great opportunities. Solar has nothing to do with solar energy or solar power. It's an industrial gas turbine company, part of Caterpillar. But I had the opportunity to work in many different sectors of the business, from engineering, sales and marketing, product development, quality. So I've got a lot of good experience in the corporate business world. So I retired in 2016 and decided to run for council and got elected. And up at the end of my two-year term, or 2 4-year terms. So I'll just end by saying I'm the only candidate that has military experience, corporate business experience, and now public service experience as one of your council members for the last 8 years. So thank you.
Mr. Tanaka.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real honor to be here. I can't name a more important meeting that happens every week in Coronado than probably a meeting of your club, the Rotary Club. There are more current or former city council members, school board members, mayors, military leaders, business leaders. This is a very important group, so I'm very honored to be here. And you're not a social group. Obviously, you are very social people. But you do a lot of important work, and that's not lost on me. And if you're saying, well, Tanaka, you're not a Rotarian, why don't you shut up? Well, I have a day job, and your work is too important to sort of be a halfway member. But again, I've always been in awe of what you do as a club. My name is Casey Tanaka. I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. I moved to Coronado when I was a second grader in 1983. I'm the only person running for mayor that's a product of the Coronado school system, so I want to highlight that. I'm very proud of the education I received here. I'm also very proud to have gone back and be part of that solution of teaching your kids and putting families first. I've been teaching at Coronado High School, AP US History, and US Government for the last 26 years. And I guess one thing I want to just say right up front, like, why am I running for mayor? Why should you vote for me? I've devoted my adult life to this city and its families. And I've also been lucky to say that this city has elected me to the city council or to the office of mayor 5 times. So whether you like me or not, you've invested a lot of time, money, and energy in training me up. And I really do think I've been a sponge for this. So, well, who do you want as mayor? You want somebody who knows how to do the job, is highly competent, and so on. So I want to tell you, I'm going to borrow from Friday Night Lights, I am clear-eyed about what it means to be the mayor of Coronado. And I've devoted my life to this sort of thing. And so I really want to serve this community the best way I can. I want to help the next city council find its voice and give clear direction to our city. And if you'll have me back, I'd certainly be honored to serve as your mayor again.
All right, thank you for those answers. With the second question, we'll begin in the middle with Mike Donovan, followed by Casey Tanaka, and then John Duncan. And here's the question. In your estimation, what are the top 3 challenges facing the city of Coronado today? First, identify the top 3 challenges, and then explain which one of these is the top priority for you and how you would go about addressing that challenge.
All right, thank you for the question. Well, hands down, the top number 1 challenge is our cross-border sewage issue. So that's a no-brainer. So that's something, it's just a problem. It's going to be long-term. There's still quite a ways to go. I think we're as far along as we've ever been solving that problem now, but it's definitely going to need a lot of attention over the next several years. Beyond that, the problems that I would be focusing on as mayor, first of all, we've learned some lessons with some of these big rainstorms that we've had. We had a big storm back in 2019. I remember it because it was the day before Pearl Harbor Day, December 6th. And then we had another one, obviously, this past January. And we, going into these, we knew that we had some areas that were going to be sensitive to heavy rains. And we had a program in place to correct those. And since it didn't rain that much before this, we had a plan in place, but we weren't as ready as we could have been when we had these huge storms. So we're gonna focus more on infrastructure, particularly our storm drain system, sewage system, that kind of thing. The other issue that I think is important to me, that I call it kind of a sleeper issue, is right now the Navy is working on an environmental impact supplement to allow 3 carriers to be in port for up to 6 months out of the year. Right now, the environmental study is for 29 days out of the year. The reason they want to go so long is because they want to do maintenance down here, because the shipyard, there's only one shipyard on the West Coast up in Bremerton, Washington, and it's pretty chock-a-block. So down the line, we need to be aware of this. We need to get to senior Navy people and let them know what the impact of this is going to be on our city. So thanks.
3 biggest issues, I think, are number 1, Sacramento. Sacramento makes the rules, we have to follow them, and Sacramento is very gifted at handing out rules that we would never vote for ourselves. But we've got to follow them. And again, I have paid attention to Coronado politics since at least the 1980s, and all the people I've identified with have been anti-density. They have said that, if you want to kill the golden goose, let too many people move to Coronado, take too many cars, just stuff everything in Coronado. And if that's what you're for, vote for someone else. But if you think that one of the keys to protecting Coronado is fighting density and trying to not overpopulate our place, I'm your guy. But the bad news is Sacramento has the opposite point of view. So they're the number 1 threat to this city. Number 2, I would agree, is the border sewage issue. I want to compliment the people who have gone before me. I think they have done yeoman's work, and I have 0 criticisms of what they've done. So the next council, the next mayor needs to carry on that work and continue a full court press. But what I think is the most germane job for the next mayor is you're going to have a city council of 5 people with 2 brand new members. And so a mayor can mislead you into saying, I'm the one that's going to set the table, I'm the one that's going to say how we're going to do this. That's not the type of mayor that I am. I'm the type of mayor that's going to listen intently, make sure that the 5 of us in the city council, we're the ones collectively making that decision. And sometimes a good mayor needs to not take credit for things and needs to step back and let the other 4 voices shine. So that's who I am. That's what I want the next mayor and the next city council to be, one cohesive unit where we understand where each of those 5 people are coming from, and that the mayor's the facilitator of that. It's not the dominator of that. And again, whether it's good or bad, I feel like I have kind of a soft touch, and that's what I want to bring to the office of mayor, and attacking whatever these issues are, whether they're border sewage, Sacramento being a disaster, and so on. So again, that's what I want to be, is someone that helps the city council find its voice and be a team of one.
So similarly to what I was saying in my opening statement, none of us are entitled to be mayor, right? You decide. We have to earn your vote. It is very easy to say, hey, there are problems, but the real test is what specifically will we do as your mayor on the problems. So for instance, on the sewage issue when I was elected, I brought back to council, we need to have our sewage subcommittee come back. The one that Whitney Benzian and Richard Bailey used to help get the $310 million in the USMCA to actually build and redo the plants, because we have an actual existential and real threat to our city. Our city cannot function. Whatever you like about our city, going to the beach, grandkids, maybe you're a business owner, none of that. Your real estate value, none of that's going to exist if our beaches are shut down for 3 more years in the fashion that they exist today. So I've done every single thing in my power to attack this huge major issue. From going to Washington, D.C. with Mayor Bailey, to going back again with Mayor Gade. It's one thing to say, let's build coalitions, let's have everybody do everything together. It's another thing to go actually build coalitions and get things done. To go to Washington, D.C. and get the most liberal members of Congress and the most conservative members of Congress in the worst time in congressional recent memory to getting anything done. And we did get an additional $150 million for this issue. I'm going back on September 9th to work on this issue. I go to Mexico City, I go to Tijuana, I joined the advisory board of the group that runs the plant, the IBWC. I've moved their meetings here to Coronado and had 3 of them here in a row. I'll do anything on these major problems. And when we talk about Sacramento, what are you gonna do about Sacramento? You need to build coalitions like I built at Sandag. You need to lobby HCD, the Housing and Community Development Department, on actually making real changes. It's fine to talk about it, but you really need to do the work, which is what I'm committed to doing to earn your vote. Thank you.
Okay, so for our third question, we're going to begin with Councilman Tanaka, then Councilman Duncan, and then Councilman Donovan. The mayor is but one of 5 votes on our city council that establishes policy for the city. Please share why you believe you will be the more valuable to the city of Coronado as mayor rather than as a councilman. And related question, if you were endorsing any of the city council candidates, let us know who and why.
Well, I've been on the city council for 18 years. 8 of them were as mayor, and I've had some really great experiences. When I think of, I see Al Overham sitting over here. Al Overham would sometimes be the one in a 4-to-1 vote. But we always understood where Al was coming from, and I can tell you it's really gratifying when Al says, you know what, I don't know if I agree with you, but I'm gonna vote with you on that. And once in a while, when you build that sort of teamwork and camaraderie, Al is the one that said, hey, we should have a free summer shuttle program. I'm your MTS rep. What do you say? And I'm like, first, I'm happy to support you. And B, if you remember, I said, you're the cheapest guy I know. Like, I can't believe you're willing to spend any money on this. If you're willing to, I'm willing to. So I mentioned that. That's one anecdote. I see Mike Woiwode here. He's one of my great friends. And I think that is a trick. That is something I have a talent for. I really do care what the other council members think. I really don't want to put my opinion ahead of them. And sometimes the uncomfortable work of being a mayor or a council member is you have to say, well, if I was going to vote on this by myself, I'd vote yes. But I'm going to back it up. I'm going to support you. I'm going to vote the other way. Last night we talked about whether or not to declare an emergency on the sewage issue. Historically, I haven't been for that, but we had a bunch of people come to us and say it's time to do it. And I said, fine, let's go for it. And no one else really wanted to. Instead, we passed a resolution that's really clear about what our issues are. And in the end, I said, I'll vote for that. Because that's the job of coalition building. You have to somehow take your own interests and subvert them. And people have to trust you. You have to be a fair dealer with other people so that when it comes time for Al to say, hey, do you want to do a free summer shuttle program? I'm like, all right, cheapskate, let's give it a shot. So again, I really enjoy the work. I've really enjoyed working with the people on the city council with, you maybe can guess 1 or 2 exceptions, but I'll let you figure that out. But I really look forward, none of these gentlemen, one wear a yellow hat, but in any event, I really look forward to the chance to serve again in the future if you'll have me back.
Oh, my.
You're up. Let's see, question number 3. Yeah, you're up.
And the question again was why would I be better as mayor as a council member, and then that nonsense about who I'm supporting for council. All right, so for me, as you can tell from my prior answers, I have a lot of passion for problem solving and working on issues. I don't really, while it's an amazing honor, I don't want to disrespect it by saying this, but my main goal to be on council and as mayor is to actually have power to actually get work, to get things done. If there aren't problems, then I'm glad to serve, but it doesn't drive me like the way I have the drive I have now. And so to answer the question specifically, as mayor, you definitely have a little bit more gravitas and power across the bridge when you're on Sandag, when you're working in Congress, on any issues that face us, Sacramento, as was mentioned. That type of lobbying, and you do get a little bit more doors open a little bit easier. And frankly, another real honest part of it is I do have concerns that if I'm not the mayor, right, I might not be appointed to these positions that I have now. And so to continue the work, that is my main driver. Now, building coalitions on council is very, very important. And watch the meetings. I'm all for what you see with your eyes and you make the decisions. I want the voters to be informed. I don't want to trick anybody. If you watch the meetings, you'll see how coalitions are built, and you'll see where most of the votes come down. To me, building a coalition is not joining a 4-0 vote and saying, I built a coalition, right? It's putting together that 4-0 vote. That's coalition building. And that's what I'm very proud of having done in all the agencies I serve. It doesn't matter what party they are. All of the people that I work with on Sandag, the vast majority are from, couldn't be more different. The most conservative politicians from East County and some of the most liberal politicians from some of the beach cities. But we found common ground in the county and the city of San Diego, abusing all the towns around the county, using a weighted vote and a bunch of other things, and now the weighted vote hasn't been used in over a year. That's building a coalition, getting something done that is actually benefiting Coronado. Thank you.
You can stay standing. Oh, wait, sorry. Mike, go ahead.
Well, it's a really good question, because practically speaking, the mayor has one vote, just like all of the other council members. But the way I see it, the mayor needs to be more of a consensus builder and work with the rest of the council to influence them or inform them, promote the discussion so that we can come up with some sort of a compromise. You know, in the military, you don't have a whole lot of collaboration. You get an order and you carry it out. In business, you know, if you have a good idea, you have to not only convince your boss, but you have to convince other people in the business, because you're going to need their support. So I've got experience in collaborating, influencing other people, but specifically on the council, the way I've approached the job is, when an issue comes up, I feel like I need to be fully, I need to understand the issue fully. So I don't just read the staff report. I do my own research. I talk to people on staff. I talk to residents, and I become fully engaged in what the issue is, what the pros and cons are. And by that, then I can make my statement on why I either support the issue or I don't, with facts and data behind it. So we make data-driven decisions. So by doing that, I think I would then have credibility, and I think I do have credibility, that when I speak, people know that I've done my research, and then we can have an open discussion, and if they agree with what I have to say, I might change their mind, or at least get a quorum on how, you know, I believe that the issue should be voted on. So that's kind of my approach to working in a group like a city council, and to drive collaboration and compromise.
Okay, so no endorsements, I guess. Okay, so let's move on to our fourth question, and here I'll begin with Mr. Duncan, followed by Mr. Donovan, and then followed by Mr. Tanaka. If elected, what would you hope would be your key accomplishments as mayor? And I will tell all three of you that I've gotten a lot of questions from Rotarians with respect to the Win Room, so if you want to talk about that in this answer, go ahead.
So the key accomplishment I hope to achieve, and you may also, I would urge you to read the Eagle answers from the candidates today that were published somewhat on this specific issue. But for me, the key would be at the end to deliver on what I've promised and said is happening. People don't really believe necessarily that we have made major progress on the sewage issue, and rightfully so. The water in Imperial Beach right now is the dirtiest it's ever been, because most of the pumps are down. And it's hard to get people to understand that the original 310 million plus the additional 150 million just arrived at the IBWC, even though the first 300 was awarded in 2020. But to bring that all the way through, right, to actually have the plants operating properly. Same with Mexico's plant 6 miles south of the border at San Antonio de los Buenos. That plant has been down for more than a decade. With a lot of pressure, Mexico's federal government came in, took over that plant this year, and promised it would be up and running by the end of September. I went down and inspected that plant with some Congress members and Mayor Geary, and they are making progress. It looks like they're short on some parts, and they'll have it done by the end of the year. But the real key for me on that is not so much which month they get it done, but if they get it done and operating before next summer, we probably will have almost no closures next summer at our beach, because all of that sewage that closes our beach during the summer comes from that plant 6 miles south of the border. The other sewage that affects us most of the year comes from the Tijuana River through the US plant and is right at the border from the rains from the mountains. So working on that and ending my term as mayor, or hopefully 2 terms if that's what it takes, but to actually be able to look at our town and see what it should be, this beach, small town culture, and our ability to use our most valuable asset, the ocean. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, well, the main thing that I would like to see done in the next 4 years would be to either have the sewage issue solved completely, but I know that's probably a pipe dream, but at least have it to where I think the data that I've seen is once we get the new plant built, once Mexico does what they're doing, we'll at least get it down to where we'll be down around 10% of the closure days that we have now. Now that's still not satisfactory, but then we could go from there and get it down to 0. The other things I guess that I've been working on that I'd like to see come to closure, and we're close to it. I've been a real advocate for historic preservation here in town. I was on a subcommittee a few years ago with Carrie Downey, and we took a total review of our historic preservation ordinance, made some recommendations to make it sustainable, and I think all but one of the recommendations we made were accepted by the rest of the council. And we're at the tail end of the last recommendation, and I think we'll have that done by the end of the year. But the whole goal is to have our historic preservation thrive. I look at it as part of our brand in Coronado, trying to keep our city residential, and history is an important part of our city. And then last but not least, I think I want to continue the good relationship we have with the Navy. The Navy gives us most of the traffic that we endure, not counting the tourists during the summer, which we're all aware of. But I think there's some way we can actually look at traffic. It's a perennial problem, but to me, it's a transportation issue. It's getting people from point A to point B, getting them out of their cars. We've tried a couple of things, the free summer shuttle, the Island Express, which is in a pilot program now, but there's some other things I think we could do, teaming up with some of the other companies, maybe our cab company. So I'd like to see us pursue that as kind of a longer term strategy.
I joined the city council in 2002, so that was 22 years ago. I was a little pup. But the 3 people that I joined the city council with who were already there were Tom Smizek, Patty Schmidt, and Phil Monroe. And so if you think about what do you know about Tom Smizek, what do you know about Patty Schmidt, what do you know about Phil Monroe, they were very fiscally conservative. And Tom Smizek in particular was a real stickler for not adding any new expenses, not adding any new staff, and so on. So for better or worse, I learned the ropes under people who had a reputation for fiscal conservatism and fiscal restraint. This city council right now is a good one, and we aren't mismanaging anything. But I think we could do a better job of explaining how much money do we have, what are those reserves, and how much, if any of those reserves, we're willing to spend. We're getting ripped right now, and I'm one of the people getting ripped for being willing to spend $31.5 million on Kays Park. I voted to spend $26 million in Parker Pump Station. I did not vote to spend $10 million on the wind room, but I would have voted to spend $6.5 million. So part of me is having a hard time telling you that I want to bring back fiscal restraint to our city when I've been guilty of maybe not exercising as much. But like I said, I learned the ropes under people who, that was their reputation, was that Coronado was not going to overspend and that we were going to be as fiscally conservative and disciplined as the people who live here. I think we as a city can do a better job communicating what it is we're spending our money on, how much money do we have, what's our capacity. I'm happy to report to you as anyone, we don't have any bonds out. We haven't been borrowing. But I think we have done a poor job of saying, how much money do we have? What are we going to spend it on next? And when you hear something like, hey, they want to spend $30 million in Kays Park, we have not communicated effectively to you. What does that mean? Or I keep trying to tell people we haven't committed to that dollar amount. We have future meetings to figure out how much, if anything, we want to spend out of that master plan. So I want to bring back a reputation of fiscal discipline that I think is there but isn't being communicated well.
Well, we've stuck to our schedule, and therefore we're going to expand the closing statements to 3 minutes.
3 minutes, all right.
So the order for closing statements, we're going to begin with Councilman Donovan, then Casey Tanaka, and then Mr. Duncan.
All right, well, thanks. And again, thanks to Rotary and everyone for being here and on Zoom to give us an opportunity to tell you some of our thoughts. I want to kind of build on something Casey said earlier in one of the responses about Sacramento. Has a lot of oversight, obviously. I mean, we're in the state of California. But I want to take that thought a step further. You know, the 8 years I've been on the council, if I were to ask what is our biggest challenge, our biggest challenge is that we've got all these agencies and organizations that have some jurisdiction over Coronado. You know, for example, the Navy. The Navy owns way more property in Coronado than we do, which I always found funny, but not funny, but you know, funny. But you know, we have other organizations. You know, Caltrans. They're focused on, hey, we got to keep our roads, we've got to keep traffic moving in and out. That's what we're worried about. We've got the port. They have their mission. The California Coastal Commission. So all these different organizations and agencies, the housing agency that we just went through a painful allocation for our housing element. These agencies are all relatively narrowly focused. So they have a mission, and that's fine. I mean, that's their mission. So they dictate to us, here, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. But the only people really looking out for the whole city is your city council. You know, 3/5 of are sitting right here right now. And the big challenge is to maintain what we want Coronado to be, a residential city, you know, residential quality of life, and still meet all of these outside forces that we have to, most of them we have to figure out how to meet. So to me, that's the huge challenge. And I mean, it's kind of a fun challenge. You win a few, you lose a few. I'd say we kind of lost on the housing, unfortunately. But that's one area where I think we need to be more proactive this time around. The next cycle is going to be starting in 28, so it's only 3 or 4 years away. So I wanted to leave you with that thought, what our challenges are. I've recognized that challenge, and everything I do in relation to being on the city council, in relation to the city, is based on doing the best we can for our city. And you know, that sounds like motherhood and apple pie, but that's why I ran for council in the first place. I don't have any hidden agenda. I tell people, you can ask me anything you want, and I'll tell you what my feelings are. I'm totally transparent. But I've been working that way for the last 8 years, and as your mayor, I'll continue to work that way. Thanks.
So I wrote down 3 words. The last 3 things I want to leave you with are trust, competency, and accessibility. The most important thing you do is you elect 5 people to govern on your behalf. Now, I don't know if that's a great idea, but that's what we do. You entrust the 5 of us to run the city the best we can. So if we're going to act on your behalf, you have to trust us. So we'll always be putting Coronado's interests first, and that there's not some side group. Is Casey aligned with this? Is Casey aligned with that? And we're all going to tell you that you can trust us, but I can prove it. I can put 2 decades of my life and my record in front of you and say, I've never sold out Coronado. And you never have to worry about that. Again, I'm poor. I'm not in it for the money. Again, I'm doing it because I love this city and I want it to be represented well. Competency. You don't want to elect a schmuck. You don't want to elect somebody who doesn't know how to do the job. You don't want to elect somebody who says, gee whiz, and isn't good at it. So I hope I've already demonstrated that you've trained me up over 2 decades to know what I'm doing, to have I think I have the deepest institutional knowledge of this city and its government of anyone you've ever trained. So if you want to put that to work for you again, hire me, I'm ready to go. Last, accessibility. I think it's incumbent. If you're the mayor of Coronado, you need to be easy to get a hold of. And I challenge any of you to say, I have a hard time getting Casey to respond to my email. If anything, you'll be like, well, he only responded within an hour. I'm used to 30 minutes. So again, I strive to be as easy to get a hold of, to be a big ear to listen, and you're not gonna, version 2.0 like on my yard signs, the same or more. So again, that's why I'm doing this. Hopefully you already get it. You already know who I am. I've already passed your test in terms of trustworthy, competent, and you already know, yeah, that guy is very accessible. He's ready to be my mayor. If I have a problem, he'll be Johnny on the spot in terms of responding and doing everything he can to address the problem. And last, I guess I want to say in trust, you're not always going to like my answer. Sometimes my job is to explain to you why the city can't help you on this. Or sometimes my job is to say, I want to help, but there isn't an avenue of approach that I can see. Am I missing something? So again, that's why I want to be your mayor. I want to be, again, your advocate, a person worthy to be casting the votes that you don't get to cast yourself. And again, if you're like, well, they're all going to say that, again, look at the years of service I put in and ask yourself, how many times were you like, Tanaka blew it? And if you do think I've made a lot of mistakes, then I think you should vote for someone else. But again, if you're like, more often than not, I think Casey sees things the way I do, then that's why I want to be your mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely gave up my 25-year legal career for the $1,000 a month on being mayor. Wow, okay. So let me hit some of these topics, and I promise I won't talk about sewage. All right, first, historic. I am a passionate believer in our small town charm, not because of the slogan, but because I put my time and treasure into restoring 4 historic homes in this town. I'm working on my 4th now. I've served on the Historical Association Board of Directors. I'm very involved with it, and I'm very, very proud of all the people who've come before me and have helped preserve what we have. Specifically, in regard to the housing issue and the cycles that were discussed earlier, I am working on the Sandke board now on the procedures for the next cycle so that we are treated more fairly and not given the ridiculous thing what happened in the last time, which was the first time this has ever happened in a cycle, where Coronado was charged with all the Navy jobs to provide housing and given 0 credit for any of the housing on the Navy bases. So that's what I'm actually working on at Sandke and with HCD. Fiscal responsibility, super, super important. One of the first things that happened with me on council, using fresh eyes, not accepting the status quo, asking questions, and not being afraid to be wrong, was when we got our budget, looking at it and saying, millions and millions and millions of our dollars are returning 0.5% or 1% or so of interest. Can we move any of this money elsewhere? That was an extraordinarily difficult journey for me to get done. It took 8 months. We moved $85 million. Last year, it is still in funds earning over 5%. That is a net millions of dollars to this town and our fiscal ability to do well. And that's our responsibility to do that for you as citizens. And that type of analysis is what I bring to council based off of all my years of experience representing financial institutions and working hard and just asking questions to see what the answer is. Communication. Communication is something I am extremely proud of. The biggest criticism I get from my friends in this town and from many Rotarians in this room is, hey John, pace yourself. You really don't have to be everywhere in town. You don't have to be at 4 events at once in a day. But for me, not seeing some nonsense on social media, but being in front of Coronadans and looking at them and saying, hey, ask me the tough question on a vote or on an issue, and being able to hear their reply. Some of those conversations start off where they were in complete disagreement, and at the end at least we say, hey, we understand each other. That is a huge issue for me. I just want to end by saying we can get the bridge suicide barrier done and built. There's going to be an announcement from Caltrans within a month. They have awarded that contract, and I'm committed to working incredibly hard to get the funding to finish it beyond the design build aspect of it. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Okay, we have time. We have 5 minutes for questions. So I don't know who's on the mics.
No, no.
No?
We can ask one question.
Well,
You need to borrow one of your mics.
Or one of the mics.
Who's asking?
okay, let's get a question. Doug, pick somebody.
Thank you so much. So I was born and raised here, but left for 30-something years. So got lucky enough to come back a few years ago. And I know what's happened in the last year or two on the sewage, and I've seen a lot of hard work. But my question is how did this how come things weren't started maybe 10 years ago, or what historically, is it just that now we're suddenly testing at higher levels because we have a more efficient or a more sensitive test? Or have we been ignoring this problem? So I'd like some historic context on the sewage.
Okay, so we're a little bit off script. We'll start with Casey, go to Mike, and then go to John. You've got 30 seconds each.
So the sewage problem has been around for a very long time. Ask Imperial Beach. They've been dealing with it for decades. I was mayor over the Obama years. So from 2008 to 2016, we didn't have beach closures. So for Coronado's purposes, we weren't being tasked, go work on this. And the mayor of Imperial Beach, while I was mayor, was Jim Janney, and he wasn't coming to me saying, hey, Coronado, I need you to be shoulder to shoulder with us. But around 2016, around 2017, the infrastructure that was built in earlier years and decades, as it starts to fail, as it's not, if you think about a car not getting oil changes, as that maintenance isn't being done, the failures are getting more extreme, and every time you have a storm event, that gets exacerbated. When Serge Deneen became mayor, that was his #1 issue, and he was like, we need a, well, I'm out of time.
Okay,
I'll let the other
we
guys.
need to pass the mic to Mike.
Yeah, to try to answer in 30 seconds or less, this problem has been, kind of a ticking time bomb for decades. And just as a matter of fact, when I got on the council in 2016, we had this huge, million gallon spill. And I still see pictures of this big brown blob. And when we looked into it, we were pointing our finger at Mexico and saying, you guys are messing up. And then when we got the first round of money, we found out that we had to use half of that for maintenance on our own plant, because the South Bay sewage treatment plant, which EPA is responsible, IBWC, it wasn't even working. So, that's how this all ended up. And it's just gotten worse and worse. My sense is that, am I out? As Tijuana has grown, it just, their infrastructure hasn't grown.
Okay, John.
So to me, this problem is sort of analogous to there's a big burning fire heading towards your community, and do you wait until your door's on fire to address it, or do you start addressing it, right? This has been going on for a long time. I will say that one of the main problems is that the IBWC is under the State Department, okay? And that one of their lowest priorities is dealing with something like this. And the IBWC had been keeping all their information quiet about the maintenance and everything else about the plant on our side of the border. It really was atrocious. It was, I discovered it or heard it and then verified at the end of the meeting it was accurate, that the plant had broken down prior to April 2023 when I was at the USMCA EPA meeting. They did disclose for the first time, and it was, why didn't you disclose this before? They said, well, we're not a lobbying agency. We're part of the federal government. But yeah, you have to tell us so we can lobby. They did not have a maintenance budget. They do all the waterways between Mexico and the United States, including the Rio Grande, okay? The diverter gate got stuck open, the plant broke down. Now we have disclosure, and we're gonna do much better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sure the candidates are happy to stick around after the meeting to answer individual questions. And thank you all to the candidates for a great debate. Thank you all for coming, and have a great Rotary week.
On their way for you. Mike Woiwode, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, President Pat. So welcome to all of you. It's great to see so many of you here for our Coronado City Council Candidate Forum. As you hopefully know, there are 2 council seats up for election in this November election. We are fortunate that we have all 6 council member candidates here. So candidates, please take the seats that you are assigned. And they have been assigned these seats randomly in a drawing. And so we have on the Audience left, Laura Wilkinson Sinton. Next, Andrew Gade. Next, Amy Steward. Next, Christine Mott. Next, Mark Fleming. And on the far audience right, Mark Warner. Each has a microphone, and they each have been given the general rules of this forum, which is that we're going to ask 6 questions. The first one has been shared with them, which is an introductory question. The final question will be a summary, and we'll adjust the time on that based on how much time is left on the clock. So they have 1 minute to answer the first question, 90 seconds to answer each of the remaining. And we're going to begin by starting with Laura. And they'll go in sequence from that point. And we're going to jump around with who starts and even the direction, because Jean Marie likes to do things like that. And she is the timekeeper, sitting in front. She'll ring a bell when the candidate's time is up. Now, audience, it's a tight timeline, so please no applause. We'll save that for the end. And hopefully the candidates will be able to stand by a little bit afterwards for individual discussions if you wish. So the first question then, beginning with Laura. Please introduce yourself, including your background, and explain why you believe you are the best, most qualified candidate to serve on City Council.
Thank you very much. My name is Laura Wilkinson Sinton. I'm a native Californian. I lived in Country Club in the 1990s. We bought our first home here in 1999. My sons went to the Coronado schools. And the reason I'm your best candidate is I am steeped in the issues that will be affecting Coronado now and in the future. I founded StopTheSewage.org as our sewage crisis predictably closed our beaches for the last 2 years, advocating for solutions there. I was invited by Imperial Beach Mayor Aguirre on a bipartisan trip to DC to bring home $156 million to start repairs on the IBWC. John Duncan was on that trip, as was Mayor McCann, whose sons are here as well. So I serve on the South County Economic Development Council as well, and I would love to be your representative and serve you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Andrew?
Good early afternoon, everyone. Andrew Gade. I'm also a native Californian from Northern California. Came down to San Diego, finished up school at SDSU, have an economics degree. I'm a small business owner. I started working at the age of 10, had worked over a dozen different jobs, and each job has awarded me, kind of a different skill set that I feel has really enabled me and will enable me to be able to represent and identify with a lot of unique issues and problems moving forward. I'm a hard worker, I'm a good multitasker. I'm also not scared to get my hands dirty. I think another thing I like to mention too is ever since I first moved to Coronado, I've become very involved in the community. I've had the opportunity of learning valuable knowledge about our city's past from countless conversations with a lot of lifetime residents, and look forward to continue learning, and that enabled me to again to offer balanced representation for our future.
Thank you, Andrew. Amy?
Hello, I'm Amy Steward. I'm a 37-year resident, a 28-year teacher here in Coronado. I grew up in a Navy family, went to 12 schools by the time I was in 9th grade, and I should have known better, but I did it anyway. I married my husband of 42 years, Daniel, who's a Navy SEAL. I've been involved in a number of initiatives here in Coronado for many years. Of course, Emerald Keepers, founder and president, my full-time volunteer job. Co-chair of Neighbor to Neighbor during the pandemic. Founder of the Coronado Speed Spinners, our jump rope team. They were nationally recognized and raised $500,000 for Heart Association. I co-chaired the endowment to build the aquatics complex with Dave Landon, who's here today, and founder of KCMS News Studio, literally built the studio and learned how to do it, and also brought Take a Veteran to School Day here to Coronado, which is the largest in the country. I believe I'm the best candidate because I have been at the forefront of positive change in Coronado for decades and has led to real action.
Thank you, Amy. Christine?
Hi everyone, everyone. Christine Mott. I am a corporate attorney, business advisor. I started my career as a Wall Street attorney at the law firm Cahill, Gordon, Rindell. I worked there for many years before becoming general counsel of ICSC, which is the world's largest trade association for the retail real estate industry. I was the sole lawyer on staff for the organization and all of its international affiliates. I have a deep background in legislative work. I've done reviewing, drafting, lobbying legislation on a local, state, and federal level. On a personal front, I'm a wife, a mom of 2 little girls, a homeowner here in Coronado, and have a vested interest in seeing this community be the best that it can be now and in the future. My top issues for Coronado are our environment, our infrastructure, our schools, and our public safety. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Christine. Mark Fleming.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. Actually, my first candidate forum today. I missed 2 because of a family trip. I was actually born in Southern California, adopted at birth, raised in South Dakota. My parents owned a small contracting business in South Dakota, and got the bug for contracting, I guess. Eventually, I relocated to Phoenix, Arizona, and worked in a contracting company, which I eventually bought from the founder of the company, and continued to grow that over the years. I've got an extensive amount of business background that I bring to the table. I think would be valuable in the City Council in Coronado, and I have managed a budget much larger than Coronado's budget, as well as over 800 employees. Moved to Coronado after I sold the business, retired, and loved this city. That's why I'm running for City Council.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Warner.
Hi, I'm Mark Warner, and I'm here to interview for a job. I'd like to be your city council member. Serving on the city council is a leadership position. Good leadership requires talent and experience. I've got some God-given talent, and I've got a lot of experience both in the public and the private sectors. In the private sector, I've led several successful companies over the last 40 years. I've served in ownership positions, presidents, and senior vice president roles. In the civic sector, I have volunteered thousands of hours of my time towards Coronado causes. I have served in leadership positions on committees, commissions, boards, and subcommittees. If you agree with me that leadership is requires talent and leadership, I feel that I am uniquely qualified to serve you as a city councilman, and I seek your vote.
Thank you, Mark. All I can say is I'm glad I'm not a candidate running against any of you. So, one of the most publicized issues, and for this question we're going to start with Amy, and then we'll go to Christine and go in that sequence. One of the most publicized issues in Coronado is the ongoing problem of sewage from Tijuana. The city is engaged on many fronts in seeking solutions. What is your perspective on the city's strategy?
Thank you for that question. First of all, sewage, as we all know, is a clear and present danger to our community, to our environment, our public health, our economy, and national security. And I believe that we need to declare an emergency because it's important to our partners. You know, you can't do things on your own. I've learned this through Emerald Keepers. You need to really reach out and work with different parties, coalitions, cities, all of this in order to get things done. So by declaring an emergency, it's more than just symbolic. It is actually something that goes to the governor's office. And in reading the guidelines, it said that it is a prerequisite that a city who needs to declare an emergency must declare in order for the state to declare an emergency. That is from the state guidelines. And so therefore, I believe it's really in our best interest to declare an emergency. In terms of things that I can also, so that's the city's perspective, things that we can do. I think that we need to work more with our sister cities, arm in arm together. I believe that we need to really pressure Blackstone. It's $1 trillion company that we can really work with them and say, you know, you've got lobbyists. You know, this is your time. Bring the lobbyist in. And knowing a little something about a Navy SEAL who got sick from the water, and my whole family and my daughter who had MRSA from the water, we can do more.
Thank you, Amy. Christine.
Absolutely, the sewage crisis is an existential threat to our community. We need only look at Imperial Beach to see what could happen here. It's a threat to obviously our public health, but our property values, our businesses, our quality of life. We need to act now. We need to act together. My approach would be an all hands on deck approach, right? We need to build coalitions. Like Amy said, we need to be working with other communities that are dealing with this issue. We need to be bringing in business stakeholders, the hotels, absolutely. Hilton and Blackstone, they already have lobbyists. Let's join forces with them. We need to be doing other things too. I think we need proactively be looking into measuring and quantifying the harm that's happening in this city. Why don't we monitoring the air quality? We all saw the news, right? So cyanide in the air, that's coming here. We need to be investing in things like that. So we have hard data. We can go to lawmakers and say, this is what's happening here. This is an emergency, and 100%, why haven't we declared a state of emergency? How do we go with a straight face to the governor, to legislators, and say, we're having an emergency here, but by the way, we haven't declared a state of emergency. So I think there's so much to be done. Clearly, it's a very complex international issue, and City Council cannot solve it alone, but there is so much that we can do together.
Thank you, Christine. Mark Fleming.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with what Christine just said. This is the greatest existential threat to Coronado and to our way of life. The businesses that we have here, property values, on and on, as the other candidates have said so far. I would take a little different approach, though. I largely agree with what our city council has done in regards to this. I think Coronado has been a leader in advocating for this issue and to get it solved. Coronado has spent more money, and I think as much or more time and energy on this than Imperial Beach and other local communities. I think although it's such a great threat to our community, I think we also have to look at this from the perspective that a lot has been done. We've got traction on this right now. I don't think it's time to be shouting from the rooftops that we have a threat here. I think we've done that. I think we've got the advocacy. I think we need to continue the pressure on that, but outside of that, we still have a city to run. And this issue has enough traction on it right now. I see it moving to completion. This is a construction project or a series of construction projects, and it's not going to be done overnight. But the fact that contracts have been let, money has been appropriated, and more money is hopefully coming is a really good sign for us.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Warner.
I agree with everything said so far. As a citizen here and affected by the water, and also just being a pragmatist, I look at the situation and I realize that this is a federal issue, and it's going to take the federal government going with the federal government of Mexico to solve this problem. I do think, and I believe and I agree with what the city's tact for the last several years. I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't understand it when it started. I thought we should have joined the lawsuit with IB, but again, I wasn't sure. I watched, I listened, and I've learned. And I fully support the tact that past leadership on the councils has done. Whitney Benzian, Mayor Bailey, Councilman Duncan. They've kept the pressure on Washington. They've hired lobbyists. They go there and they speak their language to them. I think we also, but with that pressure being exerted and on the congressmen and senators, we also need and should respect the people that have advocated at the grassroots level. The government needs to hear, not only from our elected officials, but also from the community, how outraged we are about this whole situation. It's abominable, and I am perplexed and baffled that the city of Coronado County, the Coastal Commission, why haven't they jumped into us? Why hasn't Blackstone gotten into this? there's just a lot of things, blame to be spread around. Once this is completed, hopefully, we need to keep the pressure on them to keep funding maintenance.
Thank you, Mark. Laura.
This is the issue that I know best. 20 years ago, it was predicted by all of the scientists that it would hit our beaches by 2022, and it hit right on time as predicted. And while our city chose an isolationist strategy that was very quiet, it turned out to not be very effective because it hit on our beaches anyway. There is some resent over the bridge because we didn't join in that lawsuit. There is some resent that we chose to choose a different path by ourselves and did not choose a coalition to make this happen, to cure this. This is a multi-pronged approach. This has to do with international diplomacy. This has to do with another sovereign nation. We are not on the path to getting this fixed. We're not even close. We had a couple of green days and we're fortunate for that. I serve on Mayor Paloma Aguirre. She's the Imperial Beach Mayor, for those of you who don't know, who has been leading this charge. I serve on her health task force. We're measuring the air quality right now. We have sensors at Silver Strand State Beach, another one at 4th and Alameda. The scientists are ahead on this and ahead of the publishing on this, so they were so concerned they came public with this, and that's why you see it in the news. We've been advocating for this loudly because that's the only thing politicians in Washington respond to is loud media. And that's why we have been pursuing this path on a separate track from the city. I think the city can do a lot more. I think complacency has cost us in this, and I think we need advocates at the city council to forward this and protect us. Tijuana will grow by 1 million people and an estimated 700 more macadillos in the next 10 years. We'll be back here in 5 years if we don't address this as a city and as a region.
Thank you, Laura. Andrew.
I think the sad reality is that it took 30, 40 years for us to start thinking and declaring this and considering it an emergency. We can't change the past, and spending time, wasting time talking about what we didn't do or could have done better. At this point, we need to really focus on what's happening. I would support if the city wanted to declare this emergency. I would also support us, calling it emergency. Ultimately, in the day, it's important that we work with all of our stakeholders and continue focusing and putting pressure on the federal government to work on a solution. But more so, we need to look at, long-term sustainable solutions. Some things that Laura Sinton has brought up is talking about, there's been articles on, groundwater replenishment systems, advanced pond systems, even the idea of rerouting and restoring the Tijuana River back to its natural state. We need to think about these sustainable solutions that are not going to require us to continue pounding and putting pressure on the federal government for funding that may not exist in the future. So if we can find solutions that will pay for themselves, be economically and environmentally sustainable is the key. Coronado has a lot to focus on, and yes, as a city council member, we don't have a lot of authority and power in this means, but that doesn't mean that we can't be out there engaging stakeholders, working with all the other people involved in this to continue working for a long-term solution, and hopefully getting to a point to where we can look at something that is, again, economically and environmentally sustainable.
Thank you, Andrew. For the next question, we'll begin with Mark Fleming, go to Mark Warner, and then Laura, and in that sequence. So, because our city's revenue stream and its past policies, Coronado has accumulated significant reserve funds. What do you see as the balance between developing revenue sources and how the city's money is spent?
We're in a very fortunate position compared to many other cities in California and certainly across the country. We've got a balanced budget, we've got reserves, we've got very good tax revenue. When you look at especially the TOT tax and the property taxes, that's a huge benefit to Coronado. I think that our primary thing that we need to look at moving forward is going to be infrastructure within Coronado. We're going to have more expenditures coming up in that if we really want to take care of some of the challenges that we have, especially when you talk about stormwater systems and sewage. But outside of that, I don't see a lot of other need for generating generating additional taxes in Coronado. One thing that we do need to do is the beautification of the entry into Coronado when you come across the bridge, and then also Orange Avenue. When you look at the TOT tax that we have and the benefit that this community gets out of the TOT tax, I know we deal with the downside of all of this as well, which includes the congestion within the city, especially through the summer months. But the fact is that those visitors bring in a lot of tax dollars that truly benefit this city. And I think we need to take that into consideration when we're considering projects like Orange Avenue beautification, for instance. We need to do things to continue to create a community that people are going to want to come to.
Thank you, Mark. Mark W.
Thank you. The city of Coronado is a business. It is a business that is run for the public welfare and protection of the citizens. We are very, very fortunate that we have a strong base of income coming into the city, and we are beholden to all of the past leadership for decades that have run the city in a very monetarily fiscal conservative way, that we have so much money in the bank. We got all nothing but good news. Going forward, like any business, we need to think about and wonder about what's going to happen to us. We've had floods that cost us a lot of money. What's going to come in the future? We need a strong reserve balance so that we have the money to handle the problems. I'm glad Mark brought up infrastructure. What a boring subject. But boy, until the pipe breaks in your front yard or the sewer line breaks, then it's a catastrophe. And we got to get ahead of this. I've watched the city of San Diego and I watched bursting water mains, and I'm like, no, come on. We've started in 1890. Some of these pipes have got to be old. We need to get and understand the condition of our pipes and supply lines so that we get into the ground and we fix this before it breaks and we affect people's properties and their lives. Very, very fortunate. I'm a fiscal conservative. We have great revenue. Spend money wisely. Be logical, and then take care of the people and the citizens and all the different programs that we have that we're able to benefit the people of Coronado with. And let's just keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Laura.
Well, with all due respect to Mark, I disagree entirely. When it comes to, our city is not a business. Businesses exist for shareholder value and return on investment. No one pencils out whether the fire station is going to make us money. Government operates in the public good, and that's what we should do as city council members, operate in the public good. And what does that mean? Well, we have 20 pump stations throughout the city, many of them in disrepair. When we have $70 million in reserves, and we have zero bond debt, which puts us in the top 1/100th of 1% of wealthy cities in the state of California. And while those reserves look really nice at the bank, making 7.5%, they did no one any good when Country Club was underwater. We have to invest in our infrastructure to protect our citizens. That's our job in government, is to operate in the public good and make that happen. Now, whether we deploy those resources responsibly, which is, I don't consider that fiscally responsible to have money in the bank when we're underwater and it's flooded on Orange. But deploying those resources responsibly is our job. And if we don't deploy them, we look miserly and then we wind up in disrepair. The reason we had sewage on our beaches was because of delayed and deferred maintenance down at the IBWC plant. We cannot let that happen here in Coronado. And while it is boring and no one gets elected for putting things underground that you can't see that aren't pretty, it's something that's our responsibility and our duty to you as city council members.
Thank you, Laura. Andrew.
I would say that there's no better investment than investing in infrastructure. And like Laura said, having a bunch of money in the bank is not necessarily doing us much good, because the interest rate we'd be earning on that money versus the additional cost of investing in infrastructure in the future and the cost of construction or any projects going up constantly, to me would mean that ultimately we arguably are losing money by sitting in the bank, and of course costing businesses and residents the liability issues and all the problems that come along with that. I think Coronado obviously is in a very good position, and we have to be very careful with the money we spend it on. And I would guess that's something that's been talked about quite a bit when it comes to the K's master plan, as well as the wind room and other projects that maybe aren't necessarily going to be doing much for investing in core city assets. Even though I would say that, while infrastructure may not be the prettiest thing, but maybe if we were able to get some of these power lines underground, it would be a little prettier looking around Coronado. So, in long term, I think we can look at, where our revenue streams currently as far as property tax and sales tax are strong. Long term, I think that we should look at ways that we can maybe increase some of our revenues in the city by looking at ways of possibly gaining control over some of the areas that the port currently controls. I do have a big issue with the Port of San Diego and the fact that it does profit quite a bit off Coronado, and Coronado seems to get very little back from the port. Again, that would be a long-term goal, but short-term, I think we're in a good position.
Thank you, Andrew. Amy.
Thank you. The word that just keeps coming to mind is prioritization. You know, we need to look at all of our expenses and figure out which ones are most important going into the future. And so when I think of Coronado, we're a full municipality, which means, you know, half of our budget is spent on safety, fire, police, all of that. So, you know, we have a big expenditure compared to other cities who have larger. But La Jolla would love what Coronado has, right? So we're very fortunate there. But the thing that really, that I think is that I really believe in being fiscally responsible. I believe in having rainy day fund. That's how I run my household. I'm sure you all run it the same way. The thing that really struck me when I looked at the budget, under grants, zero. There are $0 in the grants. No one is on staff who's looking at grants. We have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is specifically set up to deal with climate, to look at sea level rise, to look at storm surge, increased storms, the things that we're having trouble with our infrastructure. There may be dollars for us. And people say, oh, it's just for the poor cities. That's not true. They want cities like ours to invest in these sorts of things to be prepared for the future. We're flat as a pancake. We have to invest in infrastructure. So being fiscally responsible and prioritizing are both key.
Thank you, Amy. Christine.
Thank you. I would echo the job of the city is to manage our funds responsibly and in a way that's smart and makes sense for the future. I think that prioritizing, just like Amy said, is critical. Just like running a household budget, there's nice to haves and must haves. So to me, when I see us allocating $35 million for a park here, $10 million for an expansion of a library and into park space there, when we have our infrastructure clearly not in good shape, when we have our schools clearly not in good shape, there are other things we could be spending our money on that make more sense. I think we could also look to innovative ways of generating money. I recently built a home here in Coronado. We did solar panels all over the house, and we actually have a negative balance on our electricity bill. I think the city could do the same if we're looking into sustainable things that are going to tide us into the future. On infrastructure, I live in the country club area. I know all too well what happened there. The city did not maintain our pipes. We were not thinking proactively. We need to be doing that. We need to be thinking outside the box. It's not just about having good storm drains, great infrastructure. We need more green infrastructure. Did you know that a mature tree can absorb 2,000 gallons of stormwater? We should be planting more trees. We could be looking at other communities that deal with storms, that do rain gardens. There are all sorts of innovative ways that we can really position ourselves for the future.
Thank you, Christine. For the next question, we're going to go the other direction. We're going to start with Andrew, and so he'll go first, then Laura, then over to Mark. And the question is this: many outside forces work to push change on Coronado. The state, the Navy, Coastal Commission, Port, and real estate market are some of these forces. How will you as a policymaker help the city deal with these outside forces?
Well, I think that's one thing that makes Coronado a very unique. It's a unique city, unique situation that we're in when comparing it to other cities in San Diego County, and it's a delicate balance. I think how we are currently dealing with a lot of these agencies and entities. I feel like we're doing a pretty good job, especially when it came to the housing allocation, being able to work with the Navy to be able to get credit for the housing that helped us out, and also on that same subject. Continuing the advocacy and making sure that we're putting as much pressure on Sandag as possible. I know it's something that John Duncan is on the board, goes to meetings, and the fact that we've moved away from the way to vote, is refreshing, knowing that potentially Coronado and other small cities in the county will have a voice in the upcoming allocation. Personally, I have an issue, as I've expressed before, with the Port of San Diego. Personally, at the long term, I think that it would be nice for Coronado to have more control over its own city, its own future, have residents be able to have more say, being able to keep the majority of our tax revenues local. But in the short term, we have to work with all these other agencies as closely as possible to try to find the best balance while we're prioritizing what's best for our community, for our residents, and for our future.
Thank you, Andrew. Laura?
Could you read the question again? I want to make sure I answer it
Yes.
accurately.
Many outside forces work to push change on Coronado. The state, Navy, Coastal Commission, Port, and real estate market are some of these. How will you, as a policymaker, help the city deal with these outside forces?
So during COVID, I went back to school and got my master's degree in sustainability leadership at Arizona State University, and I managed to hijack my cohort to study Coronado on transportation issues, on water issues, so it was really interesting. And what we discovered was, I knew the Navy had a huge influence here in the port, but the number of, and these are jurisdictions, these aren't just outside influences, these are people who can directly tell us what to do. The California State Lands Commission, the California Coastal Commission, we have the Port of San Diego, we have Caltrans, we have the Department of the Interior, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and there's a numerous forces. There's really only about a third of the city that we actually have control over. So most importantly, it's been said that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And we have to make sure we have a seat at the table at every one of these different jurisdictions to make sure that happens. Now that comes with relationships, and that requires you to invest time with these people. As for 6 years, I've served on the South County Economic Development Council, which has all of these elected officials and many of these regulators on it, as well as business interests. And surprisingly, I am literally the only person from Coronado who has ever shown up. And that's surprising because we're on the agenda every single time. And that's part of that isolationist that we've had. We're not an island. I know we want to be an island. We want to freeze it in amber, but we can't. This is not the same city it was 40 years ago, and it won't be the same city in 40 years from now. And either we can have strong advocates on city council to make that happen, or we can let it happen to us. That's our choice.
Thank you, Laura. Mark Warner.
I think the outside groups that have the most influence on Coronado are the United States Navy, the Port of San Diego, and Caltrans. I love the Navy. I wasn't in the Navy. My son's going into the Navy. And the Navy is a good neighbor, but the Navy's priority is national defense, and that doesn't always align with what we want and need, would like to have in Coronado. The best way to approach the Navy, I believe, is the way we've been doing it, which is talk to them, have long conversations, appeal to their reasonableness. And I think we can make changes slowly with the Navy. The second is the port. The port controls an awful lot of the land around here. I'm the only person sitting here today who has any experience dealing with the port. I dealt with the port for a decade or more. And in conjunction with them, the Coastal Commission and the State Lands Commission. The port is a huge bureaucracy. They really do try to be good neighbors, and they try to be good landlords. They also need to have things explained to them a little bit. And it takes a lot of patience to deal with the port. And I've got relationships at the port that I've had for a long time, and I think that's going to help serve us and serve the city of Coronado. Caltrans, 3rd, 4th, Orange, the Strand. They penetrate the city. Huge traffic issues. To be quite honest with you, I have no experience at all with Caltrans. But same as any bureaucracy, you got to sit with them, you got to be patient, and you've got to be persistent with what you want to get done.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Fleming.
Well, I agree with a lot of the comments that have already been made. We've certainly got a lot of outside influences here, a lot of different regional and other governmental agencies that we need to deal with, we need to work with, and we have no choice. The agencies that have been mentioned, certainly including Sandke, is a big one. One thing that I think is happening right now that hasn't happened as much in the past is advocacy from the city council with these agencies, and I think that's crucial moving forward. We've seen positive outcomes of that with the advocacy that our current city council has been doing right now. You can look at the housing issue with Sandke is a good example of that. We have to have participation with these groups. We have to build rapport with them. We have to develop relationships with them. and we need to be a strong voice with that. And some of that is going to include being available to do that. That's one of the things that I feel that I bring to the table. I no longer am raising a family. I'm no longer running my businesses, no longer have a career. So I can spend the amount of time that is necessary in order to represent the city with these different agencies.
Thank you, Mark. Christine.
Thank you. I think the answer is twofold. I think it's advocating for ourselves. Sorry, my audio confused me there. Advocating for ourselves, but also relationships, right? So we need to be the loud voice. We, more than anybody, will know the needs of our community and what's going on. We need to be loud and let others know about that. We need to do that in a way that people like us and want to work with us, right? So I think going forward, it's I think what others have said, we need to be proactively maintaining these relationships. We need to be present, having representatives at all the meetings of these organizations. We also need them to come to us. Why don't we have, whether it's monthly or some sort of regular briefings from some of these organizations at our city council meetings? To the extent there's a big issue coming up that maybe be decided on by the Coastal Commission or the port, maybe we could say to our citizens, let's generate our community to come out and act too. Let us know, we'll all come out, arms up. This is what we need in Coronado, right? I think our voices are always stronger together. So I think it's, again, maintaining relationships, but also delving deeper into these issues, bringing more people into the fold, and that's how things get done.
Thank you, Christine. Amy.
Thank you. First of all, I want to talk about the housing, because that has the ability to change our town forever. And so, working with Sandke, I want to give a shout out to John Duncan. He's done a great job working with relationships with Sandke, repairing those relationships that have been broken, and really working together. The state housing law, this one size fits all, does not work for everyone. You know, we don't have the homeless situation in Coronado that they do in San Diego. Different communities are coastal, some are, mountainous. I mean, there's just different areas. And so this one size fit all became a double whammy for Coronado. And I really believe that we can affect change there through relationship building, the way John is doing, and others. But I also really want to engage the community in some way. So for example, the Navy situation. I'm sort of astonished. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, another carrier is coming. They're increasing the time. One of the things that we can do is we can get small groups of some of the military together who know how to deal with the Pentagon, who know how to work with the powers that be, Southwest, to try to help with this sort of thing. I also think that with the port, Emerald Keepers has successfully engaged the port, cleaning up the sewage situation just over at the moorings there. So I believe that we can do some things. I think the Kays are very upset about their land there, so.
Thank you, Amy. You get a chance to talk.
You can talk to me.
Okay, for the next question, we're going to start with Christine and then move in that direction. So it'll be Christine, then Amy, and so on. The City Council is a policy-making body. Please share your thoughts on the role of the council member in making policy versus leading a municipal corporation.
Thank you. The way I would think of Coronado, if we're going to align it with a business structure, we have a city manager, Tina Frad, who does a great job managing our city. She's effectively the CEO of our city. Sitting above that is our city council, and they are effectively the board of directors. So we are not, as city council members, directing the day-to-day aspects of the city. That's what the city manager does, and everybody she delegates to. But we are setting the tone at the top, the policy, the direction we want our city to be going in. We, of course, as the board of directors, the city council, we report to the citizens of Coronado. That's who we report to. We're supposed to be representing the best interests of our community. So to me, it's listening to the needs of the community, taking as much time as we can to really hear all the varied voices and make factually based decisions. So something I'd love to see is maybe something concept of like office hours for our city council, where people can just come Monday afternoon, whatever it is, come have your problems aired. I think anytime we can get our community more engaged in local government, it's going to benefit us all, because that is how the policy decisions are informed, right? I think that we.
Good pause. Okay, Amy.
Thank you. So I definitely believe that the city council gives the direction to the city manager, and then the city manager runs the city for us. At the city council level, it's so important to be speaking to your constituents. Find out what they are concerned about. Talking to different people, working with the different commissions, all of the groups of people who work so hard. I just looked at Wayne Strickland and I was thinking about the suicide, bridge barriers. These are community people who can get together with us and help us make the best informed decisions. I'm also a believer in best practices. For example, when the city was putting together their climate action plan, the city hired someone to do this. The problem was the agency that did the city climate action plan was the one who only had worked on LA's, the only one they read was LA's climate action plan. And I said to them, did you read IB's, National Cities, Chula Vista, La Mesa's? Did you read all of these different cities? I read 15 climate action plans to see what other cities were doing. And you know what? I was really impressed with all that they did. So I think finding out what best practices are and doing some research, some really deep research. And I think all of us up here are doing a lot of research and learning a lot by running for city council. There's many, many layers to our city. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Andrew.
As an elected member of the city council, our job is to represent, right? Represent the interests of our residents and knowing what's important. And I think a lot of that comes down to more than just listening. Sometimes by just listening to what residents are saying, that may be just a very small group of residents. It may be something that's not supported by the majority. You know, being active in our community, actually seeing things firsthand. With different groups, getting out there to all the different, events that we have in Coronado, and being active in the community, as well as having conversations with people. You know, a lot of people may not be able to get to our council meetings. A lot of people I know watch it online. So, sometimes from representing what's best for the city, if we're not really getting out there to all these community groups and engaging people, it may be hard to represent what's best. Ultimately, in the long run, it's also important that we try to engage as many ideas, as many groups. Like Amy was saying, as much research as we can do as individuals, it's important to also look at all the other research, all the other time that other groups are putting in to, as far as bringing forward ideas and trying to bring those different ideas together, balance them, make recommendations to our city manager, in essence, to be able to move our city forward and to be able to be the best representative possible.
Thank you, Andrew. Laura.
Well, first, we're not a corporation. We operate in the public good. I want to make that clear. If I could float a bond issue to build an ADU in my backyard, I would. Cities are able to do that. That's how they build. That's how they build infrastructure. And we have zero bond debt as a city. So we're in phenomenal shape there. Our job as city councilors is policy and accountability. And that means we help set the tone going forward as your representatives, speaking for the people of Coronado, and then we hold Tina Friend and the entire staff accountable for executing that policy and making sure that it's adhered to. That is our role. Our role is not to second guess the people who are designing, the front or doing the Parker pump station. We're not going to stand over them with spreadsheets. We're not micromanagers. Policy and accountability. That's our role and that's our responsibility. I think one of the places that we can really improve is communication to our residents in both directions, to make sure that we hear what you're saying on a regular basis, that we get out in the community, not just for the loud voices. And I've learned this knocking on doors. There's a lot of people in Coronado who love to have their voices heard but would never show up or would never call. And to hear what they have to say is pretty much in line with what I'm hearing with many of you today. And what we'll hear going forward, but to make sure that communication is open and the loudest voices in the room aren't the ones working the rest, setting the policy for our city.
Thank you, Laura.
Mark Warner. Being on the city council is kind of a twofold job. One, sure, we absolutely have to listen to our constituents, find out what we're doing, what's going on, what's working, what's not working, and work with them to improve the city and to protect it. But also, the role of the city council is as being on the board of directors, and we direct the city manager as our employee and our staff. Another role is to be analogous to in the old days, having the guy up in the crow's nest on the mast, looking out into the future. What's coming? What do we need to be prepared for? Well, a great indicator of the future is the past. I love history, and I read a lot of books. We need to be looking forward and preparing ourselves and positioning ourselves for problems that could come. Example, World War III. Well, please not. We don't want that. But if it happens, World War II is a great example of what happened to San Diego as a whole and the influx of people that came in to defend the country. If that happens again, what are we going to do? Is Coronado positioned to handle this huge influx of people? City services, hospitals, police, fire. Are we ready? Do we have a plan on the shelf ready to go? If you let me, I'm going to find out and we're going to make one. If you don't let me, I'm still going to ask the question because it needs to be asked and we need to be ready.
Thank you, Mark. Mark.
Yeah, I agree with much that's been said today. Certainly, the city council is providing leadership and oversight to the city manager and the city staff. We're the advocates for you. We're getting input from the community. We're here to represent you. But more than that, and I don't know exactly what the city council is doing currently. I do know that Tina Friend does reach out and communicates with other city leaders. But an example I'd give you is when I was running that large electrical contracting company, I knew that I didn't always have all the best ideas and relied on other people within my company, but I was always interested in making our company a world-class company, and I knew that those ideas had to come from outside of the company as well. And I don't think Tina Friend is the only one that could be doing this. When I was in business, I started a peer group with some other large electrical contractors spread across the United States. And we would take turns hosting meetings. We'd do it twice a year. And the things we learned off of each other was immeasurable. All of our companies benefited from it. There were things that my company was doing much better than any other companies in the group, and they could learn from, and vice versa. And so I think there's opportunities here as well for our city council in advocating for our residents to reach out to other cities.
Thank you. For the final question, which will be a closing statement, we're going to start with Mark Warner and work our way to Laura, and we'll allow 90 seconds. We'll stick to the 90 seconds, which should give us a chance to make our 1:30 deadline. So for your closing statement, please cover any ground we've missed and tell us why we will vote for you.
That's a lot, Mike. Thanks. Missed, I don't know. There are so many issues. E-bikes, shortly, I just think we need to have the state of California put e-bikes under the category of motorcycles, and then we can have enforce ordinances and protect our kids. There's just so many. I really want to serve. I've been serving this community for 20 years, and I have found, a gentleman told me, a very smart guy said, you get more in life when you give. And 20 years later, he was right. I have made so many great friends. I have met so many wonderful, interesting people, and I look forward in this position to hopefully meet more of you and learn more, because I am an open learner. I love learning stuff, and I love everybody's opinion. I never shut anybody down on anything. Hard left, hard right, I don't care. I want to hear what you have to say, because you know what? I'm not right all the time. I'm right some of the time, and I get a lot of help from people who help me to make good decisions, and I've done that in multiple organizations, Commodore at the Yacht Club, Board of Directors,
Rotary, multiple other organizations. So I just look forward to serving you and hope I can do a good job for you.
Thank you, Mark. Mark.
Yeah, so again, I appreciate everybody's time today and coming out. And I want to give a little congratulations, I think, to the rest of the candidates here. I can tell you, and I'm sure Mr. Duncan can attest as well, throwing your name in the ring is a big thing. There's a lot of time, money involved with it, and it just a very interesting process. But I would like to be a representative. My wife and I moved here and just absolutely fell in love with this community. We enjoy not only the sense of community that we get here. We were both raised in small towns. I was raised in a small town in South Dakota. My wife was raised in a small town in upstate New York. And one thing that we enjoyed Arizona when we were living there. But there's no place within the greater Phoenix area, for instance, where you really get that sense of community, let alone the patriotism that you feel here. We love that about this community. I want to maintain that. I believe that my background and experience would serve me well in serving you on the city council. I have the time available to do that and advocate for this city and advocate for the residents of this city. And I believe I've got the background, experience, and temperament that will make me a good city council member. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Christine.
Thank you. Well, I have a background in law, business, public policy, lots of experience in dealing with legislative work. I think I check all the boxes in terms of competency to fulfill this role. On a personal front, being a mom raising young kids in this community, a homeowner here, I really want to see this place be the best place it can be. I also come from a small town in upstate New York, so I want to hear where your wife is from. But community is everything, and there's nothing like really doing what you can for your hometown, having pride. I am proud to have my signs around town, and my little girls will point to them and say, "Mommy." I want to see more women represented on city council. I think that, you know what, one of the factors when I was deciding whether to run or not was, will I regret it if I don't try? And I said, yeah, I would. So even if I don't win, I think it's setting a great example for other women who I hope will continue to run. I think this is wonderful. I think 3 women running for this race is probably the first time in history, maybe in Coronado. Someone check me on that. But I think we want to see more of that. We want to see people that are interested in their community and just doing all that you can. And I wasn't born here. I'm new here. I chose to live here. I come with a fresh perspective that I think is also very valuable. Sometimes when you look at something too long, you may not see all the cracks. Somebody coming in new, I can see them. So, and I want to help.
Thank you, Christine. Amy.
Thank you. And thank you, Mike, for hosting and for timing. I appreciate the opportunity today. I really believe that I have a proven track record of leadership and success, and that I can contribute to the council on day one. I've loved Coronado since I was a young child during the Vietnam era. The first time we drove over the bridge, it was just so magical to drive in over the bridge and see the beautiful blue water and the Coronado Islands. And my mom had selected Coronado for us to live here because my dad was going to be deployed to Saigon for a year, unaccompanied, of course. And so I thought, well, this is going to be an adventure. And when we moved away, my parents said, well, we'll come back someday, as I had tears as we drove over the bridge away from Coronado. And then we got to come back. So really, truth be told, it's because of Daniel. But what I want to say is that I am running a nonpartisan race. You will not find my name on any flyers or voter guides. I believe that if we're ever to come together as a nation, we have to come together in our communities. We have to work together. There's a lot more common than what divides us. And I truly, truly believe that. And I would be honored to be your city council member. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Andrew.
First thing, it's extremely refreshing to be up here today with the other candidates, the level of respect we have, the amount of involvement from our community, and all the exposure we've gotten from our local press. You know, it's sometimes even hard for me to portray how much I truly care about, you know, Coronado and the future of our region in general. I mean, I've been going door to door, talking directly with residents, talking about concerns. But you know, one thing I hear a lot from residents is when I ask them maybe a concern of theirs or something that the city could do a better job of is, you know, that they're doing a great job. And I say isn't it nice to live in a city to where we can actually say, hey, you know what, things are actually going pretty well. When you turn on that TV, it seems like the exact opposite. You know, I think something that sets me apart from the other candidates, similar to what Amy said as well, is that I'm independent, I'm nonpartisan. This enables me to focus on, you know, our local issues that are local, and to effectively identify solutions that are best for us, not just now, but again, for looking at the next 10, 20, 30 plus years. You know, and lastly, you know, I'm really looking forward to this new adventure. I think that's what's important in life, right? We're always learning, willing to learn. I'm learning new things every single day. And, you know, that I think is going to really help me and enable me to be a great representative to our community.
Thank you, Andrew. Laura?
I think we're all here because we love our city. There's no question. And I've had a really fun time at the forums with them. They're really wonderful people, all of them. I am your best candidate, though. I am steeped in this policy, and I know where to go. We have big challenges in Coronado in the next 10 years, in the next 2 years even. I have been to Sacramento twice to testify on the Port Reform and Accountability Act to allow for better governance and for us to have some accountability for the port. I have been to Mexico on the sewage crisis, both in Tijuana and of course in Washington, D.C., and I was invited to go by policymakers there. I worked with Assemblywoman Berner's office on e-bike safety at the state level. It failed, so we have other ways to do it. We're starting to implement it in Encinitas and Poway right now because they lost a child. A 15-year-old was killed in Encinitas. We do not want that to happen here. So I do have solutions for that we can work with the school board on. You can go to my website for my background. I have an extensive business background. I was a disc jockey here in the 80s on KPRA and KCBQ. And on Channel 10, my hair was bigger then and I had shoulder pads. But I've been educated at San Diego State. I went to UCLA, go Bruins, and Arizona State recently. And I've done all of this for our community without portfolio on my own dime with this nonprofit. And that's why the elected officials that have asked me to go and that I've worked with said, you have to run, because if you have that pin on, you can open up a lot more doors and get a lot more done for your community. I'm an accidental candidate. I had no intention of ever running for office. I'm 66, I'm a grandmother of 6. I'm not running for Senate, so I'd love to be your city council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. As I said earlier, I'm glad I'm not running against these candidates because they're so well qualified, and I sure wouldn't mind giving them a standing ovation for making this commitment. Thank you for all attending. Our next meeting is next Wednesday here, and President Pat, we all done?
Let me throw my thanks into all of our candidates who showed up to speak, to Mike for giving himself to host this, all of the guests that we had here today. Thank you for being here. You are always welcome back. Paige and Richard, we will miss you. Please come back whenever you're in town. Lee Freeman, good to see you again. And go out. Have a great Rotary week and be kind.
Well, it's my honor to introduce our moderator for our school board candidate forum. Today we have Dr. Helen Anderson-Cruz, who is a 2018 to 2022 member of the CUSD board. She has her PhD in education, and she is a professor at a school up the road that kind of rivals UCLA, USC. Anyhow, Dr. Helen Anderson-Cruz, would you like to introduce our candidates?
I'm going to hold it if you don't mind. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to see that we have such a great turnout for our forum today. Both of the seats, as you know, there are 2 seats. Both of the seats are available. We are fortunate to have all 4 candidates here today, and I'd personally like to thank each and one of you for joining us for this forum. Seated at the head table, from left to right, Bill Sandke. Please come up. Shawnee Barton Merriman. Renee Cavanaugh. And Fitzhugh Lee.
You're on your own.
Such a gentleman, thank you. I'd like to very briefly go over the rules of engagement. The information was provided to the candidates ahead of time. The information that was provided to the candidates ahead of time was that they needed to be was that the order of presentation up here was made at random. The names were put into a container and drawn out, and that's why you have them seated as you do. Each of the candidates will have 4 identical questions, and each one of them receiving the same amount of time to respond to the questions. The first question was shared with each of the candidates, but the remaining 3 questions are new to them. The first question will be asked from the audience's left to right, and then we will switch up the order on the remaining questions. Of course, all manner of civility and decorum will be adhered to throughout the forum, and the candidates were asked to stay on topic when answering each of the questions. We have a timekeeper in front. So each person will be notified when they have 30 seconds remaining to finish their answer, and then a stop sign will be held when their time is up. So without further ado, I'd like to ask the first question. Mr. Sandke, you will begin. Please introduce yourself and describe the background, education, experience, service and skills that make you uniquely qualified to serve on the Coronado Unified School District Board of Trustees.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Skills, probably the thing that makes me most useful stepping into the role, should you guys be kind enough to elect me, would be my 8 years on the City Council as a councilman. Many of you are familiar with my work there. I was steady, middle-of-the-road guy, made solid decisions for our city that included, frankly, the decision to refund the bonds to get us to basic aid quicker. And that's one of the things that made me think about getting on this particular campaign. When I looked at the Tuesday before the Friday deadline, there was only one candidate, the incumbent Renee had filed, and I thought, you know, I've got the background, I've got the time, I'm going to run for this seat. And so I filed my papers on that Thursday, and then because the other incumbent had not filed, 2 more folks joined the race, which is very similar to my 2018 council race, my 2014 council race, where there were 2 candidates and another person came at the last minute. Made for a great campaign because we were able to have forums just like this one. I'm really glad you guys are here today. This is our last of 4, so hopefully everybody has a feeling for what we're all about. The remarks that began at the beginning of the meeting talked about volunteerism and stepping up for your community and not just acting but doing. And I think I have a 30 or 40-year history of doing in this community. Many of you have worked on committees with me. I shared a leadership position at this particular club in 2005 and 6, and I continue to stay deeply committed to my community. It takes courage to step up and do this. These 4 people know it. I was discussing earlier with a couple of the council candidates who are here about the courage and the difficulty to actually campaign in a community where things can get kind of, well, they call it the silly season, but actually, as somebody who ran as a council member with his heart on his sleeve, it's not quite so fun. And so I look forward to having the opportunity to share more with you, and I thank you for the opportunity to listen to me and the rest of the candidates.
Shawnee Barton Merriman.
Hello, my name is Shawnee Barton Merriman. I'm a mom of 4 Coronado Unified School District students. I'm also a professor at Cal State Long Beach. I studied art and business at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. I got my graduate degree from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I I've spent my life serving kids, from my first job as a camp counselor, helping kids with chronic illnesses and physical disabilities until now. I've taught students age preschool to graduate school. My dedication to kids hasn't stopped with my jobs. I've kept volunteering at that camp. My husband and I hosted respite weekends for families who've gotten recent diagnoses before the pandemic, and they shut it down. I was a volunteer in the Rabies Oncology Children's Playroom. I volunteer at my kids' schools. I'm on the Village Elementary Site Committee. I also am helping with the hoedown that's coming up and other PTO events. My skills, I'm a creative problem solver. The superintendent charged all of us with coming up with revenue generating ideas, and I have some. I'm financially savvy. I've worked as a grant writer. I've done finance for nonprofits. Before I had kids, I was one of the top female poker players in the world. And that might not seem relevant, but in poker, you translate mathematics and financial variables into decision making, which is, I think, extremely relatable to this. I'm a lifelong learner. I recently completed my classes to become a certified financial planner. All kinds of things like risk-taking and employee benefit calculations that number nerds like me love. So I also want to say that I'm accessible and communicative. I'll answer parent emails, and I care about the people behind the numbers and the impact on the kids. So I know I'm qualified, willing, and able to do right by our kids in this community, and if the community votes for me to serve, I will step up and I'll truly give it my all.
Renee Cavanaugh.
Is it already on? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Rotarians. I will have to pay a fine tomorrow morning at Optimist Club for me being here. My name is Renee Cavanaugh. I am a retired teacher here in Coronado Unified School District. I was elected to the Board of Trustees in 2022 and was elected by my constituents there on the school board to be president the first year. I have my master's degree in human resource management, and within my first year of being on the school board, completed my governance training through the California School Board Association. As a teacher, I had a lot of leadership opportunities within the district. I piloted new curriculum for the district, was a member of school site council, and I was a master teacher for those new teachers who were entering the profession, was a mentor for them. I've had a lot of volunteer experience in the community. I've been president of the Coronado Schools Foundation for a couple of years, I think. I can't remember how many years I was. President of the Optimist Club, the member of the Coronado Junior Women's Club, president of that, the Coronado Women's Club. I'm the only board member, current board member, or future board member who has grandkids in the school district. So I have 3 grandchildren in the school district, and it's really important for me that they have a positive experience, that they love going to school. I am a positive collaborator. I will seek to find consensus with members of the board, and I take this job very seriously, and I look forward to serving you for 4 more years.
Fitzhugh Lee.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. My name is Fitzhugh Lee. I think the biggest quality I bring is proven and demonstrated leadership over the last almost 30 years now. And that's not just because I've been married to my wife for 30 years. My wife I got from France, and we've raised 3 boys here in the last 13 years. But 24 of those last 30 were spent in the United States Navy. I've had the opportunity to lead at all levels, to include commanding an F-18 squadron. I've served in the highest levels of government, working as a congressional fellow for Senator McCain, working on perhaps the largest and most screwed up budget that there is. I have also served a brief stint as Assistant Naval Attaché in Paris. I understand multiculturalism, I've lived it. All 3 of my boys have gone through these schools, they're all bilingual, we've raised them with French and English. Additionally, I have my master's degree actually in National Security and Strategic Studies, which includes a lot of Harvard business classes, which, to be honest, wasn't a huge fan of it. There were things to learn there. One of the things that I've learned too is how to study and how important it is to know the details. Some of the things we're going to be talking today about cannot be answered very well in 2 minutes, but I'm happy to give you as much time as you want afterwards, especially when it comes to the budget. I understand how the California budget works and how that working impacts our potential funding here in the future. I'm working very closely with Donnie Salamanca, our deputy superintendent, who does budget and will be at every single budget committee, because that right now, folks, is our nearest threat. So again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be up here with all three of these people. I'll echo Bill's comments. Being a newbie at this, and Shawnee as well, it is a tremendous amount of work, and I respect everyone up here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all those answers. The second question, I will call on the candidates from right to left, starting with Fitzhugh Lee, then Ms. Cavanaugh, Ms. Merriman, and Mr. Sandke. What do you consider to be the #1 and biggest challenge facing CUSD today, and how do you plan to address that challenge?
Okay, let's continue. The first issue is the budget. So the first thing I've already done is spent, maybe nearly 100 hours of looking at the analysis, reading the state's analysis of where they see us going financially, because there is a legislative analysis office that does this. The good news is their latest revision off the governor's May revision of his budget says instead of being 30 billion short, we're only 10 billion short. And that's actually, I don't say that tongue in cheek, it actually could help us. But I've done a lot of preparation. I've talked with Donnie on specific, I don't know what's causing that, issues, and I've also thought carefully about some of the things. I already started, again, what are some of the things that we're missing that maybe we could generate revenue from? One is taking advantage of the new average daily attendance numbers that we might be able to generate, because the state is being a little bit, it's relaxing its last stance on how many days you can miss school. Basically, you could do instant study programs, but they had to be over 5 days of absences, and those absences wouldn't count. Why is this important? Because that's how we get our money, by our average daily attendance. Now, with the state loosening those requirements, now we can work outside the box, take advantage of every loophole we get, and if we can raise our average daily attendance by just 1%, that'll generate about $300,000 of revenue between every year. Keep in mind, you'll hear that we're $300,000 in debt. That's true, or that's what we project for the third year out. However, that doesn't include the approximately $1.7 million reserve we're required to have. So it's a significant problem, and I think I have the tools and the leadership skills to help manage us through that.
Renee Cavanaugh.
I think you're going to get 4 answers all related to the budget here, because that seems to be one of the most important issue that's in the forefront of people's minds. There's lots of things that we need to talk about and address over the next few years when we reach basic aid. That's going to be enrollment. That's going to be coordinated mental health efforts and supports for our students. That's going to be rebuilding our reserves, because we have tapped everything out, so we're going to have to do that. We have facilities, deferred maintenance. So all of those things are related to money, and those are things that we're going to need to spend money on. I do believe that there are a couple of ways that we can possibly bridge that shortfall that we might experience in year 3 right before we reach basic aid. One is a strategic utilization of grants that we have. We've received 12 or 13 Department of Defense grants totaling over $12 million. So if there's a way that we can strategically align some of the items that are funded through the grants to help support not only the grant effort, but to supplement other programs that we have in the school, that would be helpful. Another is, again, attendance. We are funded based on butts and seats, not enrollment. So increasing attendance, having a campaign to increase attendance and encourage those higher attendance at schools will mean more money for us. The last thing is, at the end of the year, the district will need to look at personnel issues. Natural attrition happens. We will need to kind of right-size classrooms. So there are still some ways that are some efficiencies that we can take advantage of before we reach that basic aid status.
Shawnee Barton.
I believe our biggest challenge is planning for the future. There's a short term in that, and it's kind of a unique situation that voters have to realize that there's a very different set of issues in the short term versus the long term. In the short term, we have to solve some budget problems. Everyone up here, I believe, I know them, that they're qualified and capable of doing that. It's a bit of a shell game. When you make the budget, you do it without knowing how much money the state's going to give you. So you have to elect people who you align with your values and will make decisions that you will be in the best interest of kids. I, as a parent, I feel like I have an understanding of the students' and teachers' needs, and I know the faces behind the budget numbers. My kids feel the impact of the cuts. So I just want you all to know that that's something that I'll take very seriously. The other side to this coin is you need to elect someone who's visionary. We're going to have $10 million more per year, approximately, coming in 2027. So you need to elect someone who will have big, courageous, exciting ideas for what to do with that money. And exciting might mean, changing our facilities to accommodate climate change. It might be things like air conditioning and solar. It might be, we have a lot of students who leave the district because they can't get service for their dyslexic students. So it might be creating a learning center or a program to help kids with dyslexia. It might be prioritizing dual language. You really have to think about both sides of this coin. You need to elect someone who will make tough budget decisions and be a humanizing force while they're doing that. And you need to elect someone who is a visionary for the next stage of our district's life.
So each of the candidates to my left articulated the specific budget issues very, very well. I think we have a two-pronged worst-case problem to face within the next 3 years. The budget clearly is one. The County of Education has sent us a letter that our 3-year plan is deficient. It includes, as Fitz reminded us, a $300,000 deficit. You're not allowed to do that in planning. So there will be some creative thoughts put into figuring out how that 3-year plan looks. I've given some thought to that, and I've shared those thoughts at both the budget meetings and also with Donnie, who I can't say enough good things about. And that was one of the things that made me want to work with these guys. As I worked with Carl and I worked with Donnie to learn about the specifics as I got into this campaign. I know these people are sharp, and I know their communities will be well served by it. The schools are super important. So overlaying that budget problem, though, is a collective bargaining agreement with our teachers right now. The teachers are asking for money that the school district simply doesn't have. And figuring out a way to negotiate properly with them reminds me of the budget negotiations I did with the city several times during my tenure. And from what I understand, that there is some room to wiggle, so I'm hoping we can find that, reach that budget, keep our budget intact, and at the same time reach a solid collective bargaining agreement with the teachers who are so important to our school. Of course, that longer-term plan is getting to the basic aid, and I think Shawnee mentioned some air conditioning. I know Carl has some folks working on important infrastructure issues within the school that can be addressed. The school creatively leased out some space it wasn't using to the Navy, and then used that money to create a $12 million fund to fund immediate deferred maintenance. That took place several years ago. And so on the back of the Bridge to Basic Aid, which was a decision started in 2018, I look forward to being a partner with the other members of the board and the staff, along with the employees of the district, to making sure that we keep our Coronado schools a fantastic part of our community that they are. Thank you.
This has certainly been an informative discussion. For the third question, I will call on Shawnee first, Fitz second, Bill third, and Renee last. What is your understanding of the role and professional responsibilities of a school board trustee?
Well, I heard directly from you that the school board's job is to, you have one employee, and that is Carl, and managing that employee and then balancing, keeping the budget balanced and setting policy for the district. That is my understanding of the role of the board. I think that the board also has its own goals. This year, in that was published in the plan for student achievement, the board goals were learning, to integrate personalized learning and assessment, communication, communicate openly, freely, and accurately, and support, maintain and support supportive schools. So that is what it is. One of those areas I feel like that there's significant room for improvement, and I see a place where I can do that is communication. You know, the seat that was open was when my family and other parents had some concerns, was the board member who communicated with us, who was willing to have a conversation. I, as a parent, worried when I saw that she wasn't running again, of who would step up and have conversations, who would listen to the electorate, who would be accountable to them, and that's a mantle that I really want to carry forward. That's something that I want to do well. So, you know, I know that I already am supporting the schools, and I want to continue to do that, and I want to continue, you know, being a good board member. And then student achievement is really important to parents. That's when we're out talking to them, that's what they want more of. We do really well in our general population. There's, you know, a little gauge. We're way over here with like typical learners, with special needs learners. We're more over here. So I think, you know, that's something that I saw and would like to focus on working on as a school board member.
First and foremost, we are a governing board. So that means we are responsible for approving the budget, curriculum, books. All of that cannot be done in just one meeting. Well, it can be, but the preparation to make sure that you are doing that right begins in every single day. It's not just a job where you can meet, like I said, for the one meeting a month. Not that I'm implying anyone's doing that, but it is in fact one that requires a lot of preparation, a lot of knowledge, because we are responsible, again, for approving a budget. It's a big deal. That's why when this last budget was approved, that raised the salaries of the two highest paid individuals in our district while we were still in deficit, I thought was not the best move. I didn't think that was an example of leadership, while our teachers get zero. Those are the things that have to be carefully considered and done. Also, additionally, curriculum, or the textbooks, all of those things. We're not going to be able to do that in one meeting. It needs to be done every single day, and it's going to take a lot of time. And I will dedicate that time, I assure you, to make sure that when I'm voting yes, or maybe I'm voting no, I can tell you exactly why. And I will echo Shawnee's comments. Communication is key, and we need to continue to, we'll have to try to do that as best we can. I'm a huge believer in that, and I haven't figured out yet how I will do that in social media, other ways, because I haven't been on social media for so many years. I try to resist it. It's ruining our kids, but anyway, I will absolutely be figuring out ways that I communicate daily or let you all know what I'm thinking. So that's how I see the role of a board member. It's a governing board member, and leadership is important.
So when I joined the Planning Commission, the state of California, through the League of California Cities, sponsors a newly elected commissioner. And you go to this thing in Sacramento and you hear about what governance is. And most importantly, what governance isn't. The only two people that worked for me as a city council member were the city manager and the city attorney. My role going into any other office at the city hall to ask a question needed to be an inquisitive one, and a short one, and a quick one. Our job as governing members of anybody, I'm speaking more broadly now, is to let the staff do their work and create policy and hold meetings to allow the public to comment and come up with decisions that sometimes aren't popular, frankly. We've talked a lot about financial issues. There's going to be some very difficult decisions that are going to require some courageous actions from the governing board. So as well as understanding our role, what we can and cannot do, it also puts us on the spot to decide collectively and collaboratively and working together what works best for our community. And that's not just the students in the school, because the schools are tremendously important to across the community, to property values, to how we're seen as a community. And so that role of being an ambassador falls under the school board as well. Communication was discussed. I think the decision to bring Maria Simon on as an information officer, created that position, made a big difference for how much information comes out, how organized it comes out, how it's presented in a very professional manner. And I think that as a school district is a good role. My ability to reach out to folks when I was a council member, get back to them and discuss questions with them or respond to their emails, I think was pretty solid. I'm sure you're going to hear a few grumpies, hey, you never got back to me, but to the extent that you can communicate to people in line in Vaughn's, as well as respond to their emails, that's the ambassador role that really falls upon us as well. So that's the way I would treat the job, same way as councilman.
There are two jobs to be a board of trustee. You have to have accountability and you provide oversight. So as a board member, we provide oversight with the district and making sure that contracts meet the requirements. We look at budgets. We are the line connecting you, the citizens, to our school district, holding our school district accountable. So if our school district has a plan to increase student test scores in one area, the board's job is to hold the district accountable and give them opportunities and guide them and direct them into ways that they can meet that goal. So we don't do the work. We are providing oversight and accountability to the staff and the superintendent who then do the work with the teachers. I think communication is very important, and as soon as I was elected on the board, I started having monthly open office hours. And those hours are posted on the district website. Sometimes they're at Silver Strand, sometimes they're at the district office. I've been at the high school before. I receive lots of emails from people that say, hey, I can't attend your open office hours. Can you meet me somewhere else at another time? Having that communication is really important, and being accessible is important. Another important factor that I think people may not understand is there's a confidentiality issue too. When you're dealing with personnel issues, there are a lot of things that you cannot talk about because there are personal issues. So it may seem as if there's no transparency, but there's a reason for that too.
Thank you for those informative answers. This is our final question for today. What would you identify as the best thing about Coronado Unified School District? We'll begin with Renee, go to Bill Sandke, Fitzhugh Lee, and then Shawnee Barton. Aaron.
Our district has a lot to be proud of, and there are a lot of things that we do really well. I'm very proud of the partnership that we have with our military. All the DODIA grants have supplemented the resources that we have that we need. They've been a wonderful partnership with that. The experiences that our military families bring to students in Coronado enriches us, enriches the classroom. We are a small district. We're a unified district, so we are K through high school. Some school districts are just high school or just elementary districts. So we're a small, unified high school. Because of our size, we're able to pivot sometimes quicker and easier than others. So if we need to have more mental health supports and services, the size of our district allows us to address some of those needs quicker, I think, than some of the larger school districts are. Our school district also has wonderful partnerships with everyone in the community, all of the clubs. The Rotary, you support your Interact Club at the high school, which gives fabulous leadership opportunities for students. The Optimists have junior Optimist clubs, the Emerald Keepers clubs, which provide internships and opportunities for students to have real-world experiences. It's because of those kinds of relationships in our small town that make our school district really great.
Every child, every day. It's on the wall in the back of the school district office where the folks that meet in the dais see it on the back of the wall. And that's the approach this district takes. Every child, every day. Things start in the classroom, end in the classroom when it comes to education. That's hugely important. But the resources that are developed to help folks outside the classroom are something that I think a lot of other school districts can't offer. We offer that because of internal financial capabilities, and we also offer that through partnerships, not only with the city of Coronado through our crossing guards. The school Sports Foundation enrichment programs. I spent 20 years hosting that telethon, taking it from $8,000 of contributions on an annual basis to 6 figures, and we had fun doing it, I'll tell you. How many people saw the telethon? Anybody remember that one? And so when I think about our school district, I think about the part of the community that it is. And I mean community with a capital C. Stuff that makes Coronado makes it better, because the involvement of folks, of you guys taking an interest in the schools, the involvement of the service clubs that Renee Cavanaugh mentioned. And I think the role we play in the lives of these children that attend these public schools is hugely important. And so again, every child, every day is the thing that sets our district apart. No child who has a different interest, no child that has a different emotional need, no child that has educational learning difficulties gets left behind, because our district cares. And as a board member, I would continue that tradition. Thank you.
Yeah, so the strongest attribute that we have in this community, I'm looking at a bunch of them right now, it's our people. And one thing that we can do to help improve on an already excellent school system is to leverage groups like yours. We have the Rotary Club, we have the Optimists, we've spoken of them, and you could become mentors to students. When we make our transition to basic aid, the other thing that we have going for us is the blessing of affluence. And how does that play into it? Well, all of our tax dollars, instead of just a few of them, will now go into the district, and Shawnee made reference to that. So we are blessed, and we need to be wise about how we spend that windfall as well. But the best thing about our community is our community. We're small, like Renee was saying, we can be nimble, and we can be personal. We can work with our students one-on-one. We can inspire each other. If you have a child who's played baseball, odds are I know him, because I was coaching for the last 13 years. If you're involved in Young Life, I was on the board for 6 years. And these are all wonderful organizations that make Coronado truly special.
I think the best thing about our education here is the quality. We have really high educational standards. Our kids leave and go to the top tier schools if they want to do that. They have a lot of pathways to choose from. If they don't choose that route, they just even added more at the high school. My middle schooler has been an anchor on KCMS for 3 years in a row. She knows how to use Final Cut Pro. She knows how to do audio editing. She hosted the telethon 1 year too. So there's just so many options. I really feel like we're getting a quality of a private school education through a public school venue. So that's really special. The athletics, kids in San Diego don't get to play middle school sports. Ours do. Our nutrition, there's a $388,000 surplus in our nutrition budget this year. Our kids are eating acai bowls. There's a robot cooking the food. I mean, what we have here is special. And I think every person up here running realizes that and wants to ensure that it continues.
Helen, we have enough time for 1 or 2 questions.
From the audience? If there's anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question, Jean Marie will come to you with a microphone.
Thanks a lot.
There's one over here.
I'll be great. Really great comments. Really appreciate all of you being here. The one thing that Shawnee touched upon, but I haven't heard enough about, is we do have really good academics for our students who are positioned to take AP courses, to strive. We are hurting for our students with special needs. Our students who are developmentally disabled, our students who are learning disabled, our children who need psychologists. We've let more of our psychologists go. What are you going to do to support both ends of our kids' educational experience and their needs?
1 minute per candidate.
I was first on the first one.
Go ahead.
Just do the same thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have two members of the campaign folks here who have children in the IEP program who can speak specifically to the current state of affairs in the district. The good thing about this is that even though regular state money is available for education and is cut, the state programs that support kids who need extra help are robust, and we need to go after more of that money if in fact we've got programs that can do that. That money becomes dedicated to that program and will fulfill those needs. I think the partnership with Coronado Safe tremendously goes a long way to developing that relationship with the mental health and the suicide awareness, and the other folks that are helping us at that level are really making a difference. So those partnerships outside the school district are tremendously important. But I will be honest with you, I need to learn more about that, and I will, and that is a specifically important thing to you. Ms. Siegenthaler, I'll get back to you. Thank you. I think it's you.
This is something that's close to my heart. I have a student who is twice exceptional. He needs some help with social interactions and some things, but his IQ is in the 98th percentile. We have plenty of resources to help him navigate the things that he needs therapy on. We don't have resources, a transparent path to the resources to sort of help him achieve what he can achieve with his incredible brain. I found through dogged determination that our district has teachers that are certified gifted and teaching gifted and talented students. That path probably should be more transparent. I understand why we got rid of our gifted and talented program, but I think that it's something that a lot of parents wish that we could sort of cultivate younger learners that have skills in a different way. So that's something that I would want to look into and learn more about. Stop. It does.
We have about 30% of our students who are military connected, and we have about a 30% turnover in students. So we have a high number of students who are moving in and out of the district all the time. So trying to address those gaps in learning that can occur because you came here from the East Coast and they study, in fourth grade, they study state or Revolutionary War history, and here we do it in a different grade level. So trying to address those gaps in education, one, is really important. Two, studies have shown that students who are proficient readers by third grade are 4 times more likely to graduate high school and to be successful in the career that they choose. So I'm a big proponent of really pushing and having reading success at an early age. I agree with you. I think that we need to coordinate our special education efforts a little bit more.
I'd be the other person who's lived through this experience, a lot of challenges. A very interesting article today in today's New York Times dealing with the fact that post-COVID, with all the shutdowns and everything that our kids have gone through, there's just a general rise in problems that we haven't seen before. Decreases in academic performance, increased psychological issues. My heart goes out because I went through it with one of my children. Like what Bill said, again, we have tough challenges. I don't know why we cut the counselors. I'm not saying that was bad or good. I don't know. I mean, on the face of it, I just don't know the data. But we're going to have to make some tough decisions, but we have to understand in the light of the new environment that we live in. Special education requirements have been around forever, but now we've got more.
Anyone else?
Quick question. In regard to the school, how it operates, I think on a 4x4 schedule, is that what it's called? Do you have any comments on the success or negatives regarding that schedule? And the basis of why I ask is because when I hear that there's AP classes being taught in the first part of the year, and then the test they finish and they're done, and then the testing takes place in the spring, it's something of concern for me, just because all 4 of my children have had big benefits from AP courses in their college. Thank you.
Yeah, another one teed up. When I went to the school night this year,
I hadn't, to be honest, I hadn't followed the 4x4 all that closely. Mostly because my child I was in at the time in high school was in the midst of COVID, and he lost his last 2 years anyway. However, it became glaringly apparent one of the weaknesses is that you're taking, like my son taking multiple AP courses. He's going to take AP World History right now. Taking it now won't take the AP test until the spring, while he's taking 3 more AP tests. So that is definitely on the negative side. I don't know what, at this point, I don't have any solutions, but I have a problem identified. So as an elected board member, I'll certainly look into that, but I'm sure it's a pretty complex issue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Me next. Okay. I agree with you. Whenever we had the 4x4 schedule, that was another issue that kept coming up. Students are going to take the courses in the fall. They can't test until the spring, but that's not our fault. That is College Board. So I wrote a letter to College Board. I encouraged my other trustees on the board to write a letter to College Board encouraging them to offer AP testing twice in the year, after the first semester and after the second semester. It's something they were able to do during COVID to allow students to take the AP test. They were able to rework their schedule, and my letter to them highly encouraged them because it's an equity issue. I think a lot of students would not take AP classes if they think, oh my gosh, I have to wait for a whole other semester to take it. So I think there would be a lot of students that would not want to take AP classes if they knew they had to wait that long. So my plea to College Board was to change their policy.
I had heard some concerns about the length of the class times in the 4x4, that they were increasing. And I just want to say that as a professor, I like longer class times. My class is 3 hours long, and I find that that really gives the students some time for in-depth learning and work. So that particular complaint wasn't relevant to me. Then another complaint that I've heard is with military kids moving in and kind of adjusting to such a different thing, like the course, when you come from a situation where there's year-long classes and then all of a sudden we have this 4x4, like that's a lot. So I think that's something that we need to, make a committee and work on with the military community to get that smoothed out, because it certainly should be as easy as possible for them. Other solutions that I think happen, things like band, where they were able to do that across the year. So, like most things, I think that the solution is not black or white, but will be best suited when it's gray in the middle. And I'm just going to go home and write the College Board upon Renee's recommendation.
First of all, kids taking AP classes is hugely important. I saved my parents a ton of money at UCLA. And John, you recognize one of the specifics that have been brought up to me by teachers about the 4x4, one of the difficulties with it. I think there's a significant number of pluses as well. And as a military person, I moved around. I was in Rhode Island for my freshman year, 2 years in the Fairfax County school system, and then here to Coronado for my graduation in 1982. And each of those districts had different formulas of how to teach, particularly the Fairfax County schools, where we had a 2-hour class that was a combination of English and history. We had a class for me as a sophomore that got me up to speed on the freshman-sophomore English curriculum that they used by a woman named Anne Openchain, if anybody is still scarred from their experience with Miss Anne. And so, yeah, the thing might need some work, and I think everybody up here has talked about being committed to do it, and I think the idea of having the College Board work more cooperatively with districts that work this way is really, really a good one.
That's going to be our last question. I want to thank the candidates very much for their informative responses. And with that, I'll turn it over to President Pat to bring it up.
Thank you for moderating that for us. Thank you, candidates, for being here. We appreciate all of you, even if you are an optimist. You can always jump ship. We'd love to have you. Thank all of you for being here. Go out, be kind, and keep the people in Florida and North Carolina in your thoughts and prayers.